Ma'am, this is a private executive lounge. I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately. That sentence, sharp and certain, echoed like a gunshot through the polished marble atrium on the 84th floor of Empire 1, Manhattan's most prestigious financial skyscraper. She didn't flinch. She didn't move. She simply looked up, calm, composed, resolute. The woman in the navy blue pantsuit wasn't just another guest trying to sneak past security. She was Dr. Naomi Jefferson, the CEO and founder of Jefferson Capital, a rising titan in the world of fintech, managing over $12.4 billion in digital assets. But at that moment, nobody knew that. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. The security guard's eyes skipped over her briefcase, which bore the discreet silver JC emblem, and went straight to her skin, her presence, her difference. In the far corner, sipping a $19 matcha latte, a lifestyle influencer named Lexi White was casually live streaming on TikTok. When the confrontation began, she adjusted her camera. Within minutes, her live count ticked past 3,000. She's being kicked out? Wait, isn't that Naomi Jefferson? Why is no one stepping in? The manager of the lounge, a man with slicked back hair and a Rolex that screamed overcompensation, arrived with authority. This area is for C-level clients only.
This isn't the general seating area, ma'am, he said, arms crossed, voice raised just enough to draw attention.
Unless you're a guest of one of our executives, I'm going to have to ask you to wait downstairs. Dr. Jefferson didn't raise her voice. She didn't throw out her title or demand recognition. She simply unlocked her phone and tapped an app, Jefferson Capital's executive portal. Her name lit up the screen, Naomi R. Jefferson, Chief Executive Officer. That moment changed everything. By the end of the day, over 8.2 million people would see the footage. Hashtag JeffersonGate would trend nationally. Within 48 hours, reporters, regulators, and stakeholders would all be asking, how does the CEO of one of the most powerful financial firms in the country get kicked out of her own building? More importantly, what happens when she fights back? Because what started as a misunderstanding was about to become a corporate earthquake. It was 8:47 a.m. when Dr. Naomi Jefferson stepped into the Empire 1 Tower's east entrance, the one reserved for board members, senior partners, and billion-dollar decision-makers. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned her place here 100 times over. But confidence, as the world so often reminds us, is not always enough. Naomi had a board meeting scheduled for 9:30 a.m. in the Jefferson Capital Executive Suite, a space she had personally designed when her firm became one of the tower's anchor tenants. Her day was supposed to start with strategic growth discussions and Q2 earnings projections. Instead, it started with silence. No greeting. No, good morning, Dr. Jefferson. Just the cold shoulder from the concierge, a side eye from the receptionist, and a deliberate delay at the security checkpoint. I'm here for the Jefferson Capital Executive Board meeting, Naomi said politely, handing over her digital pass on her phone, the one every verified tenant in the building used. The guard squinted. Name? Dr. Naomi Jefferson, she repeated, evenly. A pause. A flicker of confusion. Then something else. Dismissal. I'm not seeing that name here. Are you sure you're in the right building? She could have laughed. Or snapped. But instead, she simply smiled. Controlled. I'm sure. Still, the guard tapped his earpiece and made a quiet call to someone upstairs. Meanwhile, other employees and executives passed through effortlessly, keycard scanning, doors swinging open. Naomi remained standing, unacknowledged. 10 minutes passed. When she moved toward the private elevator that led to her firm's floor, another guard intercepted her. I'm sorry, ma'am. This elevator's for executive access only. Naomi held up her Jefferson Capital ID badge. It is. He looked at it, then at her, then shook his head slowly. I'll need to verify this. The air changed. A junior analyst, barely old enough to rent a car, breezed past her without a glance, elevator doors sliding shut behind him. No ID check. No questioning. Just access. Naomi said nothing, but her jaw tightened. When she reached the reception area of the executive lounge, the tension escalated further. The front desk attendant looked up from her iPad, blinked, then said, Can I help you? Yes. Naomi Jefferson. I'm here for the board session. The receptionist hesitated. Are you with catering? That was the breaking point, not because it was the most offensive thing said, but because it was the most casual, the most effortless erasure of her status, spoken like a reflex, not a slight. Naomi didn't respond. She didn't need to. A woman standing nearby, Lexi White, the same TikToker from earlier, raised an eyebrow and began recording. The manager arrived next. Tall, confident, and unshakably self-assured. The type who assumed authority because it had never been questioned. This area is reserved for C-level guests, he began, his tone already decided. Unless you're expected, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm the CEO, Naomi replied softly. Of Jefferson Capital. He smirked, as if she'd made a joke. We have very strict protocols, ma'am. I'll need to see documentation. We can't just let anyone in. She opened her briefcase. Inside, placed with exact precision, was everything. Her ID badge, her security clearance, a custom invitation to the board meeting, even a VIP parking pass that granted access to Empire One's private helipad. Still, the manager wasn't convinced. This could be fake. You know how easy it is to print these online. The irony was deafening. Outside the glass walls of the executive lounge, the morning sun lit up Lower Manhattan, a city built on ambition and reinvention. Inside, a storm was quietly forming, not from raised voices, but from subtle power plays and deep unspoken bias. Naomi stood in the center of it all. Watching. Waiting. At 9:04 a.m., the first clip went live. It was grainy, handheld, and slightly shaky, the way all viral videos begin. But the audio was crystal clear. This lounge is for real executives, the manager's voice rang out. Unless you're a guest of someone here, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Then silence, followed by the woman's calm reply. I am the CEO of Jefferson Capital. Lexi White, the TikToker in the corner seat, had been streaming for fun, showing her followers the view from the top of Empire One, her green juice, and a few shots of early morning hustle. She hadn't expected to capture something explosive. But the moment she heard the confrontation, she angled her phone discreetly and hit Go Live. By the time the manager uttered strict protocols, her audience had doubled, then tripled. Within minutes, comments flooded in. Is this for real? Wait. Is that Naomi Jefferson? They're kicking her out? Oh, they messed up bad. Someone screen recorded the stream and posted it to Twitter within 90 seconds. Within 5 minutes, clips were already circulating on Instagram Reels. TikTok's algorithm did what it does best. Locked on the controversy, boosted engagement, and pushed it into For You feeds across the country. Hashtag JeffersonGate appeared by 9:12 a.m. By 9:19 a.m., it was trending. People weren't just watching. They were reacting, stitching, duetting, commenting. Black professionals across industries began sharing their own stories. Quiet moments of erasure, assumptions, disrespect. It was no longer just about one incident. It had become a mirror. I've been called a janitor in my own office. They asked me if I was looking for someone at the tech conference I was headlining. I wore a suit, had a badge, still got stopped at the entrance. The digital outrage spread fast, but what made it stick was the footage. Naomi's composure, the blatant condescension, the uncomfortable laughter from nearby tables, and that brief second where she calmly opened her briefcase and revealed her CEO credentials, and still wasn't believed. Major influencer accounts picked it up. Lawyer Tick, Black Excellence channels, feminist creators, tech brothers, even a few finance influencers who normally reviewed earnings reports were suddenly talking about Jefferson Capital's CEO being denied entry to her own boardroom. By 9:30 a.m., the video had been uploaded to YouTube on at least 27 different channels. News outlets noticed. Local stations scrambled reporters. CNN pushed a tweet, developing. Viral clip shows Black CEO denied access to her own company's executive suite. The Verge called it a stunning example of corporate bias in real time. Back in the Empire One building, the lounge was buzzing, but not in the usual power lunch kind of way. Phones vibrated. Watches dinged. Notifications poured in.
An intern stepped into the lounge, whispering to the front desk assistant,
I think that lady really is Naomi Jefferson. My phone just blew up." The assistant paled. The manager checked his email, then his Slack. A red notification from the tower's internal PR team popped up. "Urgent. Confirm identities. Footage circulating. Do not escalate further." But it was too late. The damage had been done, not with shouting, or violence, or spectacle, but with quiet denial.
A moment captured. A voice doubted.
A reality ignored. Naomi's story was now public property, not by her choice, but by the force of collective recognition. What had happened to her had happened to thousands before. The only difference? This time the world saw it happen in real time. And it wasn't going to look away. Long before hashtags, marble lobbies, or viral outrage, Naomi Jefferson was just a girl with big eyes, big dreams, and a dirt driveway that turned to mud every time it rained. She grew up in the outskirts of Greenville, Mississippi, a place where opportunity was a rumor, not a guarantee. Her mother worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Her father left when she was 9, and never came back. But Naomi learned early how to survive. More than that, she learned how to outthink, outwork, and outlast. In high school, she rode the city bus for over an hour each way just to attend the only school with an advanced placement math class. She was the only black student in her calculus section, and the only one who raised her hand without fear. Her guidance counselor once told her, "You're smart, but maybe aim for something realistic. Community college. Clerical work. Stable." Naomi smiled politely, then applied to every Ivy League school on the East Coast. Harvard said yes. 4 years later, she graduated magna cum laude, with a double major in economics and computer science. The interviews came in fast. Hedge funds, tech startups, Fortune 500s. But none of them felt right. They wanted her brain, yes, but not her ideas, not her questions, not her vision. So, at 25, Naomi did something radical. She said no. She took what little savings she had, barely $6,300, and launched Jefferson Capital from a co-working space above a laundromat in Newark, New Jersey. She couldn't afford a receptionist, so she was the one answering phones. Couldn't afford developers, so she coded the first version of the platform herself. When she applied for her first line of credit, the banker smiled and said, "That's cute. You really think people will trust their money to a website started by, well, you?" Naomi didn't flinch. She just said, "They will, when they see how well it works." And she was right. By the time she turned 30, Jefferson Capital had over 200,000 users and $900 million in managed assets. No major VC firm ever funded her. No headline ever declared her the next Elon. But she didn't care. She didn't want to be next. She wanted to be the first. And she was. The first black woman in the U.S. to build a fintech company valued over $5 billion, without a cent of outside capital. That's the woman who walked into the executive lounge at Empire One. Not a guest. Not a fraud. Not a mistake. A force. And no one saw her coming. The room was cold now. Not in temperature, but in energy. That crisp, biting kind of silence that settles when people realize they've made a mistake, but haven't figured out how deep it runs yet. Naomi stood there, still clutching her briefcase, her posture as precise as the line of buttons on her tailored jacket. She didn't look angry. She didn't look shocked. She looked prepared. The manager, still riding the high of his perceived authority, gestured toward the exit. "Ma'am, if you don't leave now, we'll be forced to involve security again." Naomi didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly stepped forward and placed her briefcase on the marble countertop of the executive concierge desk. The soft click of the latches echoed in the lobby. "One. Ooh." The briefcase opened with surgical precision. Inside, an organized interior that spoke volumes, a Jefferson Capital branded leather portfolio, an executive clearance pass, an embossed board meeting agenda, a Jefferson Capital security token, and her ID. Not just any ID. It was the laminated, microchipped, gold-stamped kind that only one person in the entire company possessed. CEO Naomi R. Jefferson. The receptionist blinked. The manager took a step back, his certainty beginning to crack. And then, Naomi pulled out her tablet. Sleek, matte black, fingerprint encrypted. She tapped once, then again. The screen lit up with a secure login portal. Jefferson Capital Internal Executive Suite. Two-factor authentication passed. Live dashboard accessed. Then came the moment. She turned the tablet to face them. There, glowing in corporate blue and white, was her full profile. Naomi R. Jefferson, Chief Executive Officer. Clearance level, A1. Below that, real-time analytics of Jefferson Capital's trading volume, a list of live customer feedback reports, and the private itinerary for that morning's board meeting. Silence. Utter, unforgiving silence. The manager's eyes darted to the tablet, to her ID, then to her face. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't know, he stammered. Naomi tilted her head slightly. No, you didn't, she said quietly. But you didn't ask either. From the corner, Lexi White's live stream surged again. Her viewers had already tripled. One viewer comment scrolled past. This is the most satisfying thing I've seen all year. Another. That man's soul just left his body. And a third. I knew that was Naomi Jefferson. She's a boss for real. The entire atmosphere of the lounge shifted. Whispers turned into stunned silence. Phone screens turned from TikTok to Google. Someone near the elevator gasped. Oh my God, she is the CEO. The security guard who had stopped her earlier now stood frozen in place, unsure whether to salute or disappear. Naomi didn't demand an apology. She didn't raise her voice. She simply picked up her briefcase, closed it with a soft click, and slid her tablet back into its slot. Then, calmly, she said, I believe the board is waiting. And just like that, she walked past the velvet rope, into the executive wing. Not as an intruder, but as its highest authority. Behind her, the only thing more audible than the shuffle of expensive shoes was the unmistakable sound of regret. The first flip had happened, and it was only the beginning. 9:46 a.m. The lobby doors didn't just open, they parted like curtains before the third act of a Broadway show. And what walked in wasn't backup. It was escalation. 3 professionals moved across the marble floor like a formation of precision-guided missiles. They didn't pause to check in. They didn't nod. They didn't ask. They advanced. Leading the trio was Ellen Rivera, Chief of Staff to the CEO. Known throughout Wall Street for her poise under pressure, she wore a tailored blazer the color of midnight and walked like a metronome, every click of her heels exact, measured, final. In her hand, a Jefferson Capital tablet scrolled live legal updates and alerts from their crisis management AI. Behind her, James Wilder, Head of Compliance, ex-FBI, notorious for once shutting down an entire subsidiary bank during a live audit. He didn't smile. He didn't blink often. But when he did, people usually lost their jobs. Flanking the other side, Maria Chen, General Counsel for Jefferson Capital, Harvard Law, Forbes 30 under 30, and responsible for outmaneuvering 2 federal lawsuits in under 48 hours last year. Her gaze could cut through steel. The trio approached the executive lounge front desk, not slowing once. The manager turned to greet them, but before he could speak, Ellen cut straight through. Where is Dr. Jefferson? She asked, her tone leaving no room for casual pleasantries. She just went into the boardroom corridor, the receptionist stammered. Ellen tapped her earpiece. Subject in motion. Secure zone accessed. Legal on site. Begin internal compliance trace. A Jefferson server spun to life in real time, logging every digital fingerprint from the morning, door access records, Slack messages, security badge swipes, even passive audio captures from the concierge desk. James Wilder turned to the security guard. Name? Officer Grant, sir. Did you verify ID before denying access? I assumed. Wrong answer. James typed something into his tablet. One more strike, and Officer Grant would be flagged for mandatory retraining, if he still had a job. Maria held up her phone. We've secured live footage, she said. Lexi White's live stream is public and archived. Faces are identifiable. Our internal review system will cross-reference employee IDs using facial scan AI. Expect early findings in under 10 minutes. The manager turned pale. Look, we didn't mean anything. She didn't announce she was the CEO. Maria cut in like a scalpel. She didn't have to. Ellen stepped forward, scanning the concierge logbook. You escalated a security protocol on a woman with proper clearance. You disregarded her ID, her briefcase branding, and her verbal identification. Then attempted removal, on camera, in front of guests, on company property. She paused. Tell me, where in your employee handbook does it say you can do that? He said nothing, because there was no answer. Naomi returned just then, composed, elegant, file folder in hand, as if she had merely taken a brief stroll while her storm assembled. Dr. Jefferson, Ellen said clearly, your boardroom has been secured. Legal is briefed. Crisis monitoring is underway. Naomi nodded once. Good. Let's begin. And with that, she walked, unbothered, unshaken, through the security glass and into the lion's den. This time, not to prove who she was, but to ask why they ever thought they could treat her otherwise. The Jefferson Capital boardroom was not designed for chaos. It was built for control. Dark walnut walls, a 20-foot glass conference table, recessed lighting, and a skyline view of lower Manhattan that practically whispered power. But that morning, the room pulsed with unease. Every board member had been summoned with just 20 minutes' notice. Some still had coats draped over their arms. Others clutched half-drunk coffees. All were scrolling through their phones, reading headlines they hadn't expected to see today. At exactly 10 a.m., the doors opened. Naomi Jefferson entered without fanfare. She didn't need it. Behind her, Ellen Rivera, Maria Chan, and James Wilder, each holding tablets, folders, and more authority than half the people in the room combined. Naomi set down her folder at the head of the table, took her seat, and nodded toward the projection screen. Let's begin, she said. The lights dimmed. A video began to play. No music. No narration. Just raw footage. Lexi White's live stream. The TikTok clips. Audio from the front desk. Footage from internal surveillance cameras. Every word. Every pause. Every assumption. All spliced together into a 6-minute reel of systemic failure. By the time it ended, the room was silent. Not from shock, but from recognition. Board member Thomas Reed, a senior partner from a private equity firm, cleared his throat. Dr. Jefferson, he began carefully, this is deeply unfortunate. Naomi leaned forward. Unfortunate is when your flight gets delayed. This was discriminatory, and it happened in our flagship location, on camera. She tapped the table. A slide popped up. Real-time reputation damage. Charts showed social media activity. TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Reddit. Over 7.4 million views. Trending hashtags. User testimonials pouring in. James Wilder stood. In the last 90 minutes, we've received 42 formal customer complaints citing racial profiling. 7 current clients have paused investment activity, citing concern over company culture. 2 large institutional accounts are now under review. He paused. And this is just the beginning. Naomi stood and walked toward the window. I built this company to disrupt a system that locked people out, not to become another gatekeeper in a better suit. She turned to face the room. So here's what we're going to do. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Wait. We'll launch an independent audit of every frontline and executive-facing team. We'll review internal training, hiring practices, promotion stats. We'll publish the results. She looked at Maria. We'll rewrite our protocols, not just for legal compliance, but for actual equity. And if that means replacing people, we will. Several board members shifted in their seats. One raised a hand. Naomi, are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting, she said. I'm deciding. The silence after that was different. Not resistance. Realization. Maria stepped forward. We're also preparing for litigation. Class action potential is real. Our best strategy is full transparency and proactive reform. Ellen clicked to the next slide. Option A. Minimal response. High risk. Option B. PR spin. Short-term fix. Option C. Structural reform. Long-term stability. Naomi looked each board member in the eye. We can be the firm that failed its own CEO. Or we can be the firm that turned a failure into a foundation. She paused. The choice is yours. But everyone in that room knew the truth. The choice had already been made. By 10:38 a.m., the decision was official. The board of Jefferson Capital had voted unanimously for option C, complete structural reform. No one cheered. No one patted backs or offered performative congratulations. There was only quiet determination. Because this wasn't a win. It was a reckoning. Naomi stood at the head of the table. This isn't about optics, she began. It's about origin. Our origin. Who we claim to be, and who we actually are. She turned to Ellen. Let's move. The response was swift. Maria Chen drafted the public statement alongside PR and legal. It would be issued within the hour across all media platforms. No vague apologies. No evasive phrasing. The opening line was crystal clear. Today we failed. Not because of one individual, but because of the system we created. That system is being rebuilt, starting now. James Wilder outlined the internal plan. All employees will undergo mandatory equity and anti-bias training. Not just a slideshow, but immersive, story-driven training built with third-party oversight. Every 6 months, Naomi added, they'll do it again. Because growth isn't a one-time event. Then came the app. Ellen revealed the prototype. Jefferson Equity, a mobile platform allowing customers and employees to report discrimination, bias, or exclusion anonymously. Reports would bypass middle management and go straight to legal, compliance, and Naomi's own office. We don't want filters, she said. We want truth. The board assigned $2.5 million to launch the initiative within 60 days, with full rollout by Q3. Another $1 million was approved to fund a community review panel, composed of customers, small business partners, and advocates from marginalized communities. Naomi insisted on something else. Executive bonuses going forward will be tied, in part, to measurable inclusion metrics. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. She met their eyes. If inclusion doesn't affect the bottom line, it will never be a priority. Silence. Then nods. It was happening. And fast. Later that day, the firm's official social channels went live with the announcement. News outlets picked it up instantly. Clients reacted with a mix of praise, surprise, and cautious optimism. But inside Jefferson Capital, something had shifted. You could feel it in the break rooms, in the way people looked each other in the eye. In the new posters going up, respect isn't requested. It's required. Naomi didn't just put out a fire. She built a new foundation from the ashes. One where no one, no matter their title, their race, or their story, would ever have to prove they belonged. Not again. Not under her watch. By the end of the week, the building felt different. It wasn't in the lighting, or the decor, or the expensive furniture. It was in the air. At the Jefferson Capital flagship branch, located just 3 floors below the executive boardroom, something subtle but seismic was underway. The front desk team had been retrained. Not just in policy, but in perspective. New signage appeared. Every voice matters. Every guest is welcome. Compliance officers now rotated through every department. Not to punish, but to observe, guide, and document. The Jefferson Equity app launched exactly 6 days after the boardroom meeting. In the first 48 hours, it received over 700 entries. Everything from employee praise to customer experiences needing review. None were ignored. Every entry was acknowledged within 24 hours. And for the first time, frontline staff felt heard. Jessica, a junior associate who had once stayed silent during uncomfortable interactions, now felt empowered. Not only could she report what she saw, she could suggest how to fix it. And leadership listened. One customer, a black father of 3 named Andre, shared his story through the app. Today was the first time I opened a business account and didn't feel judged. The banker looked me in the eye, didn't talk over me, and didn't ask to see extra ID. That shouldn't be rare. But it is. It was no longer rare at Jefferson. Marcus Thompson, the head of security, personally rewrote every entry protocol, integrating de-escalation training, cultural awareness, and non-verbal cue assessments. His team took it seriously. They weren't just guards anymore. They were guardians of trust. Naomi walked through the lobby on Thursday morning. No cameras, no press, no spectacle. Just a black blazer and a quiet gaze. She greeted the front desk team by name. They stood taller. "Good morning, Dr. Jefferson," one said, smiling not out of obligation, but respect. Mrs. Franklin, a 72-year-old customer who had watched the live stream from home, visited the branch that same day. She shook Naomi's hand and whispered, "You didn't just protect your place. You made space for all of us." Naomi smiled. "This place was always yours," she said. "We just needed to act like it." The numbers began to shift. Customer satisfaction jumped 41% in under 2 weeks. Employee morale, measured through an anonymous in-house survey, rose 38%. Account openings from underserved communities doubled. It wasn't magic. It was intention. And it worked. Jefferson Capital hadn't just survived a PR nightmare. It had stepped into its future. It's easy to say, that shouldn't happen. It's harder to ask, why does it still happen? And harder still to do something about it. Dr. Naomi Jefferson's story began with one quiet moment of dismissal, a refusal to recognize her presence in the space she built. But it didn't end with outrage. It ended with reform, impact, and a ripple effect that extended far beyond the lobby of a glass tower. In that moment, she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every person who had ever been told, through action or silence, that they didn't belong. For every woman whose expertise was questioned. For every black professional asked to prove their credentials again and again. For every person who walked into a room they earned the right to be in, only to be greeted with doubt. So what did we learn? We learned that systems don't just fail. They're built with cracks. And unless someone is willing to name those cracks, to trace them, to speak of them, to fix them, they grow. We learned that representation is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Not for photos or stock images or slogans, but for decisions, policies, culture. We learned that inclusion without accountability is just decoration, and diversity without dignity is meaningless. Naomi Jefferson didn't set out to teach a lesson. She came to work. But when she was challenged, she didn't escalate. She clarified. She didn't collapse under pressure. She built a stronger frame. And she didn't walk away quietly. She stood up louder, not with volume, but with vision. She proved what happens when you meet ignorance with intelligence, ego with evidence, bias with balance. So here's the message. If you're someone who's been overlooked, don't internalize it. Their failure to see you doesn't define your reflection. Their hesitation doesn't limit your momentum. You are not lucky to be here. You earned it. If you lead teams, pay attention to who's being asked to prove themselves twice. Once for showing up, again for staying. And if you build systems, ask yourself, who are they built to include, and who do they quietly exclude? Because equity isn't just about who gets in the door. It's about who gets to stay, who gets promoted, who gets believed. One moment can ignite change, but only if we carry it forward. Naomi did. Her company did. Now it's our turn. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Your courage matters. Don't wait to be invited to the table. Build your own. And when someone tells you, this isn't your place, look them in the eye and say, it always was. You just didn't recognize it yet. Then sit down, take your seat, and lead.